really emphasize this for you because I don't think a lot of people might understand that being equal might seem very normal. But where I come from, India, and a lot of developing countries around the world, more often than not, this is an exception. It's actually a privilege. My first experience of the glaring disparity between boys and girls came at a very, very young age. I grew up in a middle-class family with extremely philanthropic parents who constantly reminded me and my brother how lucky we were and how giving back to those who were less fortunate was not a choice, it was a way of life. Simple. I was 7 or 8 years old when my parents started taking me on these visits in a traveling clinic to developing communities around and villages around the city that we lived in called Bareilly. We were packed into this ambulance and my parents would provide free medical care to people who couldn't afford it. My job at the age of 8 was assistant pharmacist. So I would count all the medicines, put them in an envelope and give it out to patients, and I really took my job very seriously, very seriously. But the more I went on these expeditions, the more I began to notice the simplest things that distinguished a boy from a girl or a man from a woman. For example, girls were pulled out of school when they hit puberty because they were considered ready for marriage and babies. That's 12 and 13, while boys still enjoyed their childhood. Or basic human rights such as healthcare were denied just because they were women. Let's call this whole experience trigger number 1 for me. Fast forward a few years and many, many triggers in between. Like a producer-director, for example, early on in my career, I must have been about 18 or 19, telling me that if I didn't agree to the ridiculous terms or painfully low salary in his movie, that he would just replace me. Because girls are replaceable in the entertainment business. That was a memorable one. Made me decide to make myself irreplaceable. But I think what really moved the needle for me and ultimately led me to create the Priyanka Chopra Foundation for Health and Education and around the same time partner with UNICEF was an encounter with my housekeeper's daughter. About 12 years ago, I came home from set early one day and she was sitting in my library reading a book. And she must have been 8 or 9 years old and I knew she loved reading. So I asked her, I was like, it's a weekday, why aren't you in school? And she said, oh, I don't go to school anymore. So I went and asked her mother, and I said, why isn't she in school? And her mom said that her family couldn't afford to send her and her brothers to school, so they chose the boys. The reason, she would eventually get married and it would be a waste of money. I was completely blown, and it shook me to my core. Eventually, I decided to cover the cost of her education so that she could continue to learn, because education is a basic human right. And a huge necessity, especially today. From that point on, I was determined to make a difference in as many children's lives as I could, in whatever big or small way that I could contribute. There's a really, really beautiful quote that I read recently, and I think it's absolutely appropriate to explain what I'm trying to say today. The hand that rocks the cradle, the procreator, the mother of tomorrow, a woman shapes the destiny of civilization. Such is the tragic irony of fate that a beautiful creation such as a girl child is today one of the gravest concerns facing humanity. Girls have the power to change the world. It is a fact, and yet today, girls are more likely than boys never to set foot in a classroom, despite of all the efforts and progress made over the last 2 decades. I'm just going to give you a stat, more than 15 million girls of primary school age will never learn how to read or write, compared to 10 million boys. Primary school, it's the beginning of our future. Over the last 11 years, I have witnessed firsthand the incredible work that UNICEF does for children around the world, especially victims and survivors of child marriage, displacement, war, sexual violence. But there is still so much work to do. And for me, that is the fuel to my fire. The reason I'm so committed to this cause, and that is where my passion stems from, because I know that a girl's education not just empowers families, but communities and economies. A result of her education, we all do better. It's just as simple as that. As entertainers and influencers sitting in this room, I feel that it's our social responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless, which is why I applaud each and every woman in this room for being such a badass. Oh my gosh, I can't do it in 30 seconds. I'm gonna start with this one because this is epic. All right, great. So you're saying when a man Eve teases a woman, she slapping him is what was the word you said? Is abuse of a man. When a man is Eve teasing a woman and she's walking by and he's like, "Ooh, kya lag rahi hai? Kaisi chal rahi hai?" A woman shouldn't go, "Chal be." Psh. You're saying that's wrong. Because physiologically, men and women are different, sir. There is no debate about it. Equality is not about physics. Oh my God, this is so basic. We have to get into it. Okay, when we talk about equality and opportunity, we talk about cerebral opportunity. We're not saying I want to be able to be 200 pounds like a man and beat the shit out of somebody else. We're not saying that. We're saying you get the ability to get the job, to be the CEO, and nobody questions when you're driven at 50 and have 3 children, how you're managing it all. Don't question me. That's what I'm saying. I can be a CEO and a mother. So when a girl slaps a guy, when he Eve teases her, he deserves it.
Parents always told me, if you have an opinion, don't be afraid to share it. And that's all I did. I didn't know how to walk on heels. I tripped on my sari backstage 5 times. And then I was in like these velvet pants with boots on, and then I tripped on it again. I knew it would happen to me on stage. I still have PTSD about it. But I'm just saying, like, it gave me a sense of the fact that my personality and the way I speak and my confidence is what won me that crown, made me feel like confidence is your best accessory. There is nothing else you need. The only thing you need to wear well is your confidence. That's who I've always been. So whether I'm coming to America, whether I go to India, I'm always true to just who I am. If you try and change yourself according to thinking that, oh, I'm going to a different country, or, you know, I need to please, or I need to not be alien enough, or you're overthinking it. People have to like you or relate to you for who you are. You can't be someone else suddenly. So I've stayed very true to who I am, whether it's in India or here. I mean, as much as I can, of course. But see, what is the choice? That you walk a path like everyone else, dressed in suits, go to work, and come back and never have a legacy. Or you swim upstream like a trout against norm. And then whatever little you achieve is only yours. It's not like everyone else. And I'd rather have something that is my path, paved by me, something that is my legacy, my own self, my own achievement. I had the worst